Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmrityang Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Sodantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharani Nirvishesha Shunyvari Paschatya Deshatarani. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today's class is it's going to be, I think, a short one. The classes are supposed to be 1.5 hour long. This is going to be the last class, and I'm going to give an overview of these two books. A very brief overview. The big book is called The Environmental Solution. It's 450 pages, and it's very complex. I sometimes call it a reference book or perhaps a university textbook. The smaller one is 100 pages, and it's an abridged copy and simplified. And when I say simplified, I mean put into simple language. So this is Vaishnava cultural ecology. And the overview is that it's an attack on modern culture, and it's simultaneously comparison of modern culture and Vaishnava culture, showing that Vaishnava culture is superior. Now that's within the context of environmental destruction. In the books, as much as possible, I use modern language. I put all of our philosophical terms, Sanskrit and so forth, ISKCON-isms, into modern language. And it's within the context of environmental destruction in the sense that when I compare modern culture to Vaishnava culture, I show that Vaishnava culture is observably more harmonious with nature than modern culture is. So that's an observation. Modern culture, in general, requires observation. Modern culture is, in general, based on empiric science, which means observation. So, there's an attack on the basis of modern culture. There's two attacks, 2 points of attack, meaning that there's 2 sections in these books. One is philosophical, one is the basis of a modern culture. So philosophical means that this is the way what I'm calling a knowledge system or a knowledge school, like democracy, science, socialism, capitalism. The way these knowledge schools define reality. So there are perceptions. 7 billion people have their perceptions of reality, how they operate in their respective cultures. So their perception of reality. Now, how well, you can see the last point, how well is their culture treating nature or treating the environment? So that relates to the way these knowledge schools define reality. So this is the first section of the book. Then I attack how the culture manifests. Of course, attack means the modern global culture or the materialistic culture. So how does the culture manifest? The culture is practiced in such and such a way, and how does it relate to nature in terms of its operation. So how it relates to nature is its weak point, and that is how it may be observably judged. So back again to this first slide. Again, I show the weakness of empirical science, democracy, socialism, capitalism, humanism, and Western Christianity, which are in general the major schools of knowledge in modern culture. Now, for the presentation of Vaishnava culture, there are 4 areas that I emphasize that are pillars in the treatment of nature. Of course, they're also, we respect them as pillars of our Vaishnava society. But these are the pillars that enable Vaishnava society to relate well with nature. First is that the life essence, should say life essence, or the soul, is equal in all. Sama sarveshu bhuteshu. So that's one verse, chapter 18. Or vidya vinaya sampanne brahmane gavihastani shunichaiva sabhakecha pandita samadarshana. So that's another Bhagavad Gita verse indicating that this is the highest level, observing that the soul is equal in all. At minimum, there's one Christian writer in the 60s who wrote that Christianity got rid of the concept of animism in cultures around the world. The concept of animism is that there is soul in nature. So he's criticizing this, that this has been destructive to nature. Because according to this man, he says that seeing the soul in nature creates a boundary between humans and nature that humans are reluctant to cross, meaning that if there's reverence for nature, then humans are reluctant to overexploit and destroy nature. So the living essence is equal in all. This is an important aspect, and this is a basic aspect. Prabhupada sometimes suggests that in our preaching we begin with the idea that we are not the body, we are spirit, soul. So this is how I begin, that we are not this physical form, but we are the life essence. Prabhupada also mentions that Krishna does that in Bhagavad Gita. That's where he begins. So the next one, also based on what I think Prabhupada would like us to do, is celebration of Vishnu Krishna Leela, misspelled, celebration of Vishnu Krishna Leela and names gives the enjoyment or satisfaction required for less consumption. So what is it that the culture has? The fundamental aspect of the culture of hundreds of millions of people that have existed for thousands of years, that they celebrate Vishnu, Krishna, Rama, Narayana, Leelas and names. And in Northeast India, the Gaudiyas call this Sankirtan. And it's done through drama, art, music, literature, home worship, temple worship, festivals, dance, architecture. So there are so many expressions for celebrating Leelas and Namas. And I thought long and hard, meditated, where would Prabhupada want me to begin? Sankirtan. Lead with Sankirtan. Number 3 is agrarian economy. The natural, rural, self-sustaining agrarian economy, which is based on yajna, and our yajna is Sankirtan yajna. So, and that is Varna. The joy of austerity, the Vaishnava culture, it even extends beyond Vaishnava culture, of course. The idea of tolerance, tolerating nature. Krishna says, Shita Ushna, Sukha, Dukkha. So that means summer, winter, happiness, distress. Tang stitikshasva bharata. He says, tolerate these, Arjuna. Yang hina vyatyantyete purushang purusha shabha samadukha sukhang dhirang. So amritat bhaya kalpate. So, and one who can tolerate those is eligible for liberation, in Prabhupada's language. So this concept of tolerance is there throughout the literature. In Manu says that Vanaprastha should live in a cave and should tolerate the winter and sit in front of a fire in the summer. So this concept of tolerating nature, it pervades the culture. In modern culture, fight with nature or exploit nature. There's little else. Fighting and exploiting, as opposed to tolerating. So, what is this for? What did I write this for? Just for some exercise, or to show a few people, to give a few classes? No, this is designed to create influencers, not social media influencers. Influencers like Radhe Shyam's program. Radhe Shyam in Pune, India, has created a program over 26 years, over which time, over 26 years, there have come about 250 preaching houses that are associated with colleges and universities across the country, India, and 10,000 young people have been influenced to chant 16 rounds. That's what I mean by influencer. I mean personal influence. Not social media, not something abstract. We just want to influence you. We have no idea who you are or where you're going to go. These are personal influencers who directly influence people, and they know where they're going. They're monitoring them. They understand. Are you chanting 16? Are you chanting 8, 4? What's your commitment? So there are 670 brahmachari preachers also around the country who sustain and maintain the influencers. The influencers themselves are senior university college students. They influence the first year, second year ones. So Radhe Shyam's students influence the other students based on personal development. That means that he uses a method of personal development, meaning like time management, relief from anxiety, the anxiety of tests and competition in universities. This is especially prominent in India. So we want to influence based on environmental issues, because we feel that environmental issues will be more relevant for young Americans than personal development, than getting ahead through time management. So certainly a percentage of Americans who are eager to get ahead in the world will be concerned about personal development. But I feel that environmental issues will cast a broader net. So speaking about a wider net, here are 3 advantages over current recruitment methods. Of course, there's very little, there are many endeavors around the country, North America, Canada, Europe. There are many, many programs for recruitment and for engaging young people, directly in temple activities. Many. This is a little different because number 3, the goal is larger scale recruiting. In 26 years, the result of 10,000 means larger scale. So that's a system for establishing a larger scale of recruiting rather than one by one. Whenever I talk to devotees about recruiting or making, as we say in our language, making new devotees, then they say, oh, last week we had a really nice person come, or yeah, 2 weeks ago this one person joined. So this is a different concept. This is establishing a network, a system that works on a broad scale. So what are a couple of the aspects? This is cultural over spiritual or religious. We're comparing two cultures, Vaishnava culture and modern global culture. So it's a cultural attraction or a cultural focus rather than a spiritual focus. Not a spiritual culture, but a culture. Because if you describe Islamic culture, you don't say it's a spiritual culture. You say it's Islamic culture. Now, everybody in that culture, it doesn't necessarily believe in Allah, but because they're a part of the broader culture, they're influenced. The influence of Islam is in these countries, Indonesia, Middle East, Middle Eastern countries, Pakistan, all these countries. So the people in the culture are a wide variety of people, but they're influenced by Islam. So Vaishnava culture is a culture that has a tremendous influence on the people who are within its influence. They're influenced in the Leelas and Namas of Vishnu, Krishna, and Rama. So that's the difference between cultural and spiritual. Social activism is a cause that appeals to young people. Social activism always appeals. People are dissatisfied. I was just talking to somebody 2 or 3 days ago, and he brought up something. He said, oh, it was really a trivial thing, but he was dissatisfied about it in his local community, as if the local authorities should take care of every little thing. So I thought that was interesting, that the level of dissatisfaction, especially among young people, is very common. It's common for people to be dissatisfied with the authorities, with society. So to present social activism, that there's something wrong with society, it's a natural way to create interest. And then to suggest that there's activism involved, that we want to actively recruit people to become involved in this, that we want them to become leaders and influencers. We want to train leaders, not just an influencer in this, that, oh, I'm going to talk about this, like on the internet. It has to be somebody who has leadership qualities. There we can lend advice. We have many leaders in ISKCON. We are able to train leaders. This is what we do in ISKCON. When Prabhupada left, we had leaders who carried on the mission. And we have schools, we have programs all over the world to basically train leaders, to bring devotees along and in their careers as practicing devotees. So this is what we want to do. Influencers, but leaders. Now, what's the difference between the little book and the big book? In the small book, I've cut it back and I focus only on modern culture and Vaishnava culture, as I said. Some sections are also cut back a little bit. But one of the major differences, in the big book, I cover all the major cultures in the world. Now, I basically demonize the modern culture. I think now I can use that word because I just listened to a lecture by Prabhupada this morning. I was sitting out there and Prabhupada's lecture was playing, and he was saying how the difference between devotees, and I forgot what he was referring to, but it was very much in relation to, he was talking about science, and that's right. He was talking about science and how they want to take credit for everything. If they cure somebody or if they create something, then they want to take credit for it. And he said the difference between them and devotees is the devotees will acknowledge that it was God. And then he said that they do not acknowledge God. They're demons. So this is my primary goal, is to demonize modern global culture because of its, not because it neglects God, but yes, that's a conclusion that I make. I say that the observable proof is that you're destroying nature. And that other cultures that have respect for the higher order, it may be pantheistic, polytheistic, monotheistic, however they define the higher order, other cultures have a tendency to respect nature, the visible nature, the physical nature. But the culture that rejects this higher order, regardless, that's just a generalization as I present it. Regardless, the modern culture disrespects nature. So it's obviously weak and self-destructive, not just destructive to nature, but self-destructive. So I present other cultures as well. And these cultures are in varying degrees of favorable. I make an analysis of the cultures based on how they define reality. And that's from the philosophical point of view. And then how they're treating nature. And then I suggest that Vaishnava culture is the best. So it's, in many ways, it's a fair analysis. I'm presenting these other cultures. It's obviously biased in favor of Vaishnava culture, but at least I'm presenting the other cultures, which I feel is less biased than an environmental science textbook. So some of the cultures, obviously I begin with modern global culture. Chinese culture, South Asian, Latin American, Russian, Islamic, Sub-Saharan African, Buddhist, Vaishnava. So Vaishnava culture is the last. And then the third section, there's two sections that I've just mentioned. One is the philosophical basis, and two is the practical expression of each culture. Again, in relation to nature. The third section is a Vaishnava commentary on environmental science and how environmental science is concerned only with analyzing usually ecosystems and technologies and laws and treaties that can solve the problems, environmental problems. So what they ignore is that there are cultural solutions to these problems, meaning that cultures in the world have a history of harmony with nature, greater harmony with nature. There's no perfection in this world. A history of cultural harmony, and currently, at least parts of the culture are still far more harmonious with nature than modern societies. So this neglect of, I point out the neglect and various symptoms of that neglect in environmental science. So that's the third section, and that concludes the talk. It's 11 o'clock, according to our agreement. We go basically half an hour, but we could take any comments or questions if you like. Anything? What are your plans for popularizing the books? This is something I have to rethink. I wanted to I wanted to do something like Radhe Shyam, and he sent a couple of his. He has a GBC mandate to come to the United States and establish his program here. So it's a multi-year. To set up his program, it requires a few years. He sent Arjunananda here to New York, and Arjunananda is setting up that program, that 26-year-old program that's so highly successful in India. I asked him, he's been here, I think, for a year, and I asked him what his next step is. He's going to Jersey City, set up one of these houses. Like I said, there are 250 in India. He said it'll take him about 2 years, he thinks, to get the system rolling. It's kind of a cyclical system whereby the fourth-year students recruit the first-year students as they come in. And the fourth-year students are completely in charge of the house. They manage the house, they supervise, they cultivate, they nourish the younger students, and they have regular program like we would see, Mangalarti, perhaps a little later in the morning. They chant 16 rounds. They have to do their studies, obviously, and they go to school, but they're basically learning to become regular temple devotees, brahmacharis. And so to set something like that up, because the first-year students then go to second, third, fourth, and then they become the leaders, and then it's cyclic. Then they graduate, they go somewhere, maybe in some cases they join temples. So it requires some years to set up. So my problem is that it's new. So it's not proven that using their program uses personal development, as I said, as a theme for attracting. Mine is the environment. I want to use their model, but how to break in is another thing. And the other thing that sort of militates, I would say, against my implementation is that every temple has 2 or 3 or 4 different programs for recruiting. And I'm bringing yet another one. So who's to say that this is any better, and is there room for yet another one? So that's all right. I'm complaining but not complaining. So this is a practical obstacle that's my responsibility to overcome. Long answer to a short question. Yes? She's saying, what was her question, though? She's presenting Puerto Rican culture?
In the context of this, saying, well, why not just go back to that tribal culture? Why do we have to go to Vaishnava?
Yes, okay, yes, I understand. Yes, and in my book also I present cultures like that. I talk about the pre-conquest cultures of South America and also African culture. So there's a lot of animism in African culture and Chinese culture. So all of these I present more or less in a favorable perspective in relation to modern culture for various reasons. So why go to Vaishnava culture? Well, one reason is that that culture, the culture in the Americas, the Puerto Rico and other places in the Americas, was really decimated by the Europeans, by the Spanish especially, Portuguese. And then, of course, in North America, the North Americans really wiped the cultures out, the pre-colonial cultures. So the Vaishnava culture is relatively unscathed. The Muslims, they destroyed edifices. They didn't really destroy the culture. The British influenced the culture in a materialistic way. So Europeans influenced cultures, but not like the Spanish did in South America. So Vaishnava culture is a full, rich culture that's being practiced by hundreds of millions of people. And we can see beautiful examples of it throughout those hundreds of millions of people. Whereas the old pre-colonial cultures of the Americas, including Puerto Rico, we can see remnants of that, yes. But as far as a complete society, complete culture with, as we would say, with its intellectuals or priests, with its administrators, with its farmers and merchants, and with its laborers, with the interaction of all those different levels. It may not be perfect, but it's much more complete than, as I said, these decimated cultures in Africa and South America, and pre-colonial cultures are pretty much, in general, pretty much finished. And in China, the pre-colonial culture has been replaced. China and Southeast Asia, many of these cultures have been replaced by socialism. Socialism is yet another European invention. So that doesn't work either. So yes, you can pick another culture, that's fine. Just like we say that somebody prefers to say another name of God. So that's fine. You have another name of God, but we recommend chanting. So if you want to pick another culture, yes, we recommend that you pick another culture, because this one is headed for the wrong place. But we recommend our culture as the best, and you please investigate it. We can teach you more about our culture. There's yet another long answer to a short question. Yes. 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 Yes, the Gita and Bhagavatam, they're the basis. The Gita especially, excuse me for interrupting, but we're recording it and your voice is not, I need to summarize and I'm having trouble. You're saying many things. So maybe part summary is that, yes, the Gita is a wonderful book that really is a philosophical basis of the Vaishnava culture, but it's the philosophical basis for many more people than just Vaishnavas. And careful of this line. And yes, it goes so far that the modern revolutionaries like Tilak and Gandhi, they had to make comments on the Gita because to show that they're part of the culture, even though perhaps it was a political movement, just to be part of the culture. So the Gita is such a fundamental work. And then Bhagavatam, Ramayana, and Mahabharata, these are, I like to say it's a Leela culture. So these Bhagavatam, Ramayana, Mahabharata, of course we're Bhagavata Vaishnavas, we prefer the Bhagavatam. But this Ramayana culture is also spread widely. They're also Vaishnavas. In Southeast Asia, they like to, for hundreds of years, they've been expressing the Ramayana, Mahabharata culture. And yes, culture. It's an important direction. And in the West, I don't know, you may not realize this as a visitor, but in this country and many European countries, to say the word religion or spiritual, it's a little provocative, meaning that those words mean usually either something in what we would call New Age, so they're ill-defined, like the word spiritual is not very well defined to people, and religion, many people, they don't like religion. Or if you say religion, it means Christian religion. So I like culture. I like the idea of presenting culture. And especially within this context, as you remarked, the millenniums, of course, I think the millennial people, what do they call it now, Ryan? Gen Z, is that it? Yeah, we've gone beyond millennials now. That they say these are marketing terms, though. So the different young generations, they're more and more conscious of the environmental issues, and so this is our hope that we can appeal to them. That appeal to them in a sense that this is not optional for you. That if we present spiritual life to you, in a sense, this is optional. Because in the West, especially in this country, religion is an option. And you can practice on Sunday if you like, or if not, you don't need to. Spiritual life, that's something you may be interested in if you're a spiritual person. But this is not optional. You have two choices. Continue to follow your culture, which is modern global culture, and destroy nature, or accept Vaishnava culture, or another culture of your choosing. Maybe it's Puerto Rican culture, but you must reject modern global culture in favor of a healthy culture. We suggest Vaishnava culture, and we'll teach you. But you have to make a choice now. This is not optional, like spirituality or religion. So, trying to make it a little more provocative. In the U.S., I think people like it, you know. They like to object strongly. Excuse me for that. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.